Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I know it's been eons, but today I actually have a really interesting car for you guys to look at in the video. As you can obviously already see, this is the Audi e-tron. For those of you who don't know, this is actually Audi's first production all-electric vehicle, not a hybrid. It's an all-electric. There's no internal combustion engine here at all. So I was actually lucky enough to pick one of these up as my loaners when I had to give the RS3 in for the scheduled maintenance and the 20,000 mile maintenance. So the service advisor actually asked me if I would be interested in testing one of these as my loaners, and I just grabbed at the opportunity because this is something that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. So super excited to actually be talking to you guys about this because again, lots of cool stuff going on with this vehicle. Unfortunately, I'll probably have this only for about 2 days or so, so I can't do a whole lot. So this won't be my usual super detailed like owner's view of the vehicle. But again, the intent is to give you guys at least some idea of what this vehicle looks like, runs like. Obviously, I don't own it, so I can't talk to you about that. But just a quick take on the e-tron. Right. So let's start off with the looks again. It's the silhouette of the e-tron is shockingly similar to the recently launched Audi Q8. In fact, honestly speaking, if I didn't look at the e-tron badging over there, or at the rear or actually the front grille, I would mistake this for the Q8. But that being said, if you actually keep the Q8 and this side by side, you'll notice and you'll realize that this is a bit smaller than the Q8. The Q8 is actually the same size or similar size to the Q7, which we are all quite familiar with, whereas the e-tron actually, funnily enough, sits somewhere in between the Q5 and the Q7 in terms of the overall dimensions. But again, it's a good looking vehicle. It essentially follows Audi's or actually any and every recent German manufacturer's spiel of it being a coupe, even though no, it's not really a coupe, but you get it. It's a very aggressive rake to the rear end. So on the back is where it's very different from the Q8. But once again, if you're not familiar with the Audi product stack, you would mistake this for something that is very similar to the Q8. You have the typical clean Audi look. This particular loaner actually comes with a towing package. I was surprised by that. The fact that Audi is factory installing a towing option for an electric vehicle. Again, not because of the fact that electric vehicles or electric motors do have a lot of torque, so it makes sense. It's just that I wasn't sure if the cooling and whatnot was up to the task, but clearly it seems to be. But so yeah, you have the e-tron badging. Again, no quattro badging anywhere, which is kind of actually very surprising. These do come with the 21-inch optional wheels. They look really cool, but I think they are fairly pricey. I do have the window sticker in there somewhere, and I'll talk to you about that. So once again, in overall dimensions, it sort of sits somewhere in between a full-blown tall SUV and a much more sleek wagon. I feel like it's sort of like a nice halfway house between the two. I really like the design profile, to be brutally honest. As a wagon lover, it's certainly not a wagon, but I also feel like it's passable. It's not as egregious as a full-blown SUV. What I do not like is this very glossy plastic trim piece that they have going over the length of the door, or most of the length of the door. I just feel like it ruins otherwise very clean side profile, a very clean side design. I wish if they really insisted on putting that plastic trim piece there, it should have been a dark gray or something along those lines. But nevertheless, apart from that, very clean. And obviously, as you can see, the big difference between this and any other Audi is the fact that you don't have a fuel flap. You actually have a charging socket. So it's interesting. Actually, let me see if I can show you this. So this particular car is now being charged by our level 2 charger that you can see over here. sorry for the unfinished garage. That's actually a remnant from when we owned an electric vehicle, a Chevy Spark. So, you know, it kind of worked out fine, I guess. So the way this works is, even to disconnect this, you can't just plug it out. You actually need to press this button over here, and that actually, then you'll see a little white latch like thing that actually prevents this from, there you go, it prevents it from actually releasing. So when you press this button, that latch releases and you can pull the plug out. So this actually caught a friend of mine completely off guard, because they weren't prepped for this. They just thought they could pull the plug out. It didn't work that way, so something to keep in mind. So here's the button. Pressing that, actually it's a motorized setup. I know it's deeply complicated, but it is what it is. So this is your typical standard level 2 charger, and at the bottom is the DC connection. So for those of you who are familiar with the DC fast chargers, at least here in California, there are a bunch of them across a lot of Whole Foods. So you have something that plugs into the entire sort of socket, the top and the bottom, and as the name suggests, it fast charges the car. So this particular vehicle, I think it has the capability to be charged up to 80% in 30 minutes or 40 minutes. I'll put the actual spec up somewhere on the screen. So again, that sounds cool, but as I mentioned, availability of fast chargers in general is not super prevalent. But if you do happen to be close to one, it's a really nice, you know, perk to have. And for the most part, on road trips and likes, taking a 20-30 minute break is not really that bad. But nevertheless, that's where the charging port is. So again, you can see a lot of, I don't know if this is coming through in the video or not, you can see a lot of fairly intricate detailing. It looks like triangles. I'm going to get geeky there. It looks like a lot of tessellated triangles along the base of the headlight module, right? And they have this nice quattro e-tron detailing. Let me unlock the thing and show you the little light works or a light show that puts up. So there you go, right? So that seems to be a signature for all new Audis, where every Audi puts on a little light show. So what you see here is an actual functioning vent. So it actually gets air in there, relieves some pressure from the wheel well. So as I just mentioned, it's an electric vehicle, so you can't have a whole lot of fake vents and whatnot, because that just ends up creating unnecessary aerodynamic drag and obviously brings down the overall efficiency. Likewise, if you look at the grill, these are all actually just completely blanked out parts of the grill. None of this is functional. There's just a little slat, about 4 slats in between, where it's functional, and even behind that, I'm not sure if this is an active aero shutter kind of a setup, but there isn't a whole lot of ventilation needed for some of these electrical systems. But that being said, if you do look down at the bottom, you have active vents. You see the aero vents there. I don't know if you can see them. They look like blinds. So those will open and close based on the cooling needs and requirements of the vehicle. You obviously have the sensor suite up here. This is very interesting because it, for some reason, feels like Audi is not able to make up its mind on how it wants to go ahead with integrating its sensor suites into its vehicle. So I don't have the all-road here, but if you look at our all-road, it has a where you would typically see the fog lights on either sides, either corner. You see 2 radars or sensor suites, and then it has a sensor up top near the back of the rear view mirror, right? But then if you look at this vehicle here, for example, no sensors on the sides. You still have the camera and whatnot up top near the rear view mirror, but you have a single sensor pack right here in the middle, right? However, if you look at the Q8, the new A6, the new A7, and the new A8, you see something similar, but 2 of them on either side of the logo, the grille. Now, my guess is that at least the Q8, A6, A7, and A8, they probably offer more advanced semi-autonomous to autonomous options, because on this particular vehicle, we'll take a look at the interior soon. On this particular vehicle, the driver assistance features are actually no different from what's on our 3-year-old all-road, in that you have the lane keep assist, the active lane keep assist, you have the adaptive cruise control, the lane departure warning, and all the usual stuff, right? So it's not quite autonomous, and it's basically level 2 semi-autonomy. But it's just funny that depending upon the variant or the vehicle, they have a completely different setup for the sensors. And I have to say, by the way, this is much more sort of integrated and discreet than the somewhat ugly setup that they have with the Q8 and whatnot, where it's just like sort of out there, the two sensor bulges, so to speak. But so yeah, that's pretty much the exterior. Actually, so before we jump into the interior of the car, unfortunately, well, let me restate it. It does have a frunk, as you can see. It's not the most usable frunk because it would not even fit in carry-on baggage here, maybe one backpack at best. And if you do that, then you'll have to find an alternative location to keep the mobile charging solution that Audi bundles with these cars. So it's kind of surprising, especially if you look at the Teslas and whatnot, and the very fact that they don't have an internal combustion engine. Instead, the motors are actually along the axles or in hub. It's kind of strange that they couldn't make more efficient use of the available space over here. But nevertheless, so you don't have a terribly usable frunk. You have a lot of the other electronic components for the electric drivetrain over here, but again, there is a lot of space, but it just doesn't seem to be particularly well utilized. So this is the front of the car, the what would have been the frunk if there was one actually available. Whereas if you look at the back, it's actually pretty damn good because it's quite spacious. I'll get the measuring tape out soon, but again, it's wagon-like in terms of the fact that because they didn't try to cram in a third row, there's actually a lot of usable depth to the cargo area. The height is fine. There is, again, as you can see in profile, let me show you here, a fairly steep rake to the rear. Maybe this is a better shot. There you go. It's a fairly steep rake, but nevertheless, it's actually quite a usable cargo space. It does come with air suspension. Again, I'll show you that when I'm playing around with the interior. So the car can be lowered, but even in its lowest setting, it's obviously going to be higher than most station wagons. Definitely the Audi all-road. So again, keep that in mind if you have older dogs, and likewise loading stuff, carrying heavy stuff is going to be a little bit more inconvenient compared to a sort of lower to the ground station wagon. All right, let's start off with the interior, and oh man, this interior is absolutely gorgeous. So to be upfront, again, as I mentioned, this particular car does come with, I think, almost all the options available on the e-tron. So this does have the fancy 21 turbine wheels. I think that's what they're called. It does come with the fully kitted out Prestige package. I think it comes with the cold weather package, which is rear seat heaters and a couple of other things over there. But man, this interior is awesome. Like, again, no surprises, it's an Audi after all, but the material finish, the fit, the design, it's just amazing. And oh, as part of the Prestige package on the e-tron, you actually get a fancier leather as well. Valcona leather, I think, is what it's called. So the grains, if you notice, you don't actually see a typical graining. It's very smooth, it's very supple, it's very soft. It reminds me a lot of Audi's Napa leather. So again, very, very nice quality interior. It definitely looks very, very upscale, and it better do that, because with all the options included, this thing is north of $85,000, which is quite pricey. So all right, so again, in terms of typical fit and finish, you have soft touch plastics up top. You have really nice this is not real metal for sure, but metal look and feel levers. You have the suede over here. I don't think this is natural suede, but again, very nice, very high quality. It looks really nice. You have it, you can't see it in the bright daytime, but there's like an LED strip right in there, which again, like a lot of modern Audis and in general a lot of modern cars, you can play around with for the mood lighting. You have nice metal, I don't know if it's actually metal, but very nice metal or metal looking buttons for the power windows and the child lock. So this is leather, really nice leather again. So the bottom is definitely hard plastic over here that you see, but the memory controls. But in general, overall, a pretty fantastic job in typical Audi fashion with the choice of materials and the design and the overall setup. To cap things off in the rear over here, you have two USB ports in the back. Again, very useful. Although now actually just playing around with stuff, I did realize that there's a missed opportunity for Audi. So this is the center armrest. So here you obviously have the cup holders, and once again, leave it to the Germans to find super complicated ways of engineering cup holders. But what I feel like is a missed opportunity is this seems essentially useless in that it's too shallow if you look at the depth for anything meaningful to be kept here. I don't even think sunglasses would fit because the top is not concave, it's flat. It'll likely crush sunglasses. This should have been a Qi wireless charging pad, so that in addition to the front wireless charging option that's available to the driver or the front passenger, one could have been made available at least as an option in the Prestige package for the rear passengers as well. But nevertheless, there is that. I am very surprised by the fact that there isn't, in typical Audi fashion, a pass-through from the rear. Usually there's a ski pass-through over here. I can't seem to find a way to actually enable it, or maybe I'm mistaken. Oh, no, there is. Oh no, there isn't. So it's either all or nothing. You either get to flatten the entire center or nothing. So you can't just have the pass through. But anyway, as I said, very nice quality leather, solid fit and finish. Something gimmicky. You can't see it now during daytime, but the edges of the seat belt receptacle are actually LED backlit. So again, it sounds gimmicky, and it's mostly gimmicky, but at night or in absolute darkness, when instead of you trying to fiddle around trying to find your buckle, you can actually see it backlit, which is again a very nice touch, and it goes to show you the level of attention to detail that Audi is typically known for. So yeah, so with that, we can actually come to a conclusion, the interior and the exterior. Oh yeah, we do have a full panoramic sunroof with the fabric sunshade that's now standard fare on Audis. But yeah, excellent interior, I have to say, top notch, very good quality materials. In general, very well finished. I'm still not entirely sold on the concept of getting rid of all the buttons. I know it's a very sort of like, you know, cliched comment everyone is making that, but factually accurate, because this is more distracting than just have physical levers and knobs. But that being said, going with a touchscreen setup, if that's just the future, what Audi has done here with their execution is actually really good, both in terms of the way the design looks and also the actual execution with the haptics and the responsiveness and whatnot. Excellent job. So kudos to Audi on that. Hey guys, so as mentioned, I'll actually be talking to you. I'm returning the car today. We've had it for a little over 2 days. So as mentioned, I thought I'll put a quick video together to talk to you about the driving experience of well, driving the Audi e-tron. So obviously, as you know, you guys can imagine, it's just been 2 days. That's nowhere near enough time to really judge a car, how good a car is. Does it fit your lifestyle? Does it fit your requirements and whatnot? But that being said, again, it's actually been quite an eye-opening experience, because we've had We've owned an EV in the past, as I mentioned a few times before, Chevy Spark. Obviously, it's nowhere in the same league as an Audi e-tron. But the point being that we've lived the EV life, so to speak, right? So we know full well what it takes to live with an EV on a daily basis, the charging, the range anxiety, and all that fun stuff. But the point being that we've put this car through its paces over the last 2 days, as we would any of our regular cars. We've used it to go shops for groceries, that's short trips. We also made it a point to try and drive this all the way to SF and back. So that's a fairly long trip. I would say a little over 100 miles round trip. So again, not super exhaustive, but again, this is not just from me driving this for about 2-3 hours and calling it a day. So the net is that I've grown to really love this vehicle. I've always had a thing for this car just because of the fact that it looks so much like a normal Audi, both on the inside and the outside. But I wasn't sure how the whole electric, it being all electric only, would work out. It's actually been working out really well. Let's quickly get to the elephant in the room, the range. So as you can, I don't know if you guys can see it in the video right now, and again I apologize for the ad hoc GoPro camera placements, but it's projecting 204 miles right now, and this is after a full charge. We had left it to charge overnight using our level 2 charger, again from our Chevy Spark. Now yesterday when we left for San Francisco, again on a full charge, the car mentioned that it had roughly about 211 miles of range, and the round trip to and from San Francisco, our destination, was somewhere to the tune of, if I'm not mistaken, 110 miles or so, mostly on the 280. So I'll get to how we drove and the driving style and whatnot, but the point is the round trip was about 110 miles, let's call it 110 miles. And as I mentioned, we started off right around 211 miles on a full charge, and we got back home, we had again a projected 105 miles. That's pretty amazing, because our experience with EVs in the past have been that the projected mileage, the range that they show, tend to be quite optimistic, and it tends to fall off a cliff, especially once you start hitting highway speeds. And again, for those of you who know, living in the Bay Area, in the South Bay especially, and heading to SF, it's all highway, right? We took the 280. So the fact that we traveled about 110 miles and the projected range went down by about 105 miles is very impressive. All highway mileage, right? So that's point number one. Point number two, again, talking about the driving style. So while going, it was me who drove the car, and I actually ended up driving, setting the cruise control and driving right around 73, 74, 75 miles per hour range. That's going rate for the 280. Actually, usually people end up driving faster than that. But the point being, again, I was not driving at the speed limit. I was not babying the car. But then again, I wasn't also abusing or driving particularly aggressively. Keeping that in mind, the car did a phenomenal job with the adaptive cruise control of just keeping up with the traffic right in front of the car. It did really well. On the way back, my wife drove the car. I wanted her to actually look at the, just feel the experience. And the primary reason was our all-road is due for a replacement next year, in the sense that we get done with the payments and that, and I'm looking to potentially change that car. And I want to see if I can swap the A4 all-road out with something like this. Wife is kind of sort of against it because she feels that the car is a little too big, and that is true, by the way. I'll get to that as well. The heft of the overall vehicle, you can really feel it. So she's a little against that, but net she really loved the vehicle. She loved the way it drives. Obviously the interior is absolutely gorgeous, but on her drive back, she actually drove it realistically, in the sense that if you were living in the Bay Area, you were actually driving back from a commute wherein you have to change lanes, keep up with all those pleasant folks in the Prius going at the speed limit in the left lane, you know who we're talking about. So she bounced between, like, you know, the low to mid 60s and the high 70s back and forth. So very, very realistic. So again, so the point being that the drive to and from the city was very, very realistic, and we were able to net across our 110 mile round trip roughly about 105 miles worth of reduction in range. So that means that, realistically speaking, 2 trips back and forth, 2 real trips back and forth from the city is quite doable with this car, and that's really impressive. I mean, honestly speaking, it's not a road trip vehicle per se, because we've obviously not taken it on a road trip to figure out how the DC fast charging works. But as an everyday car for I would say vast majority of the folks who end up commuting to and from work, even from the city, this actually ends up working really, really well. Now, a couple of points that I want to touch upon from the experience. As I mentioned, the heft. You can feel the weight of the vehicle. I mean, Audi's done a good job of, in general, tuning the throttle response, the steering and whatnot, to try and mask as much of that as possible. But make no mistake, this is clearly a 5,000 plus pound vehicle. When you drive it, when you turn it, when you try and navigate it in the parking lots and whatnot, you can feel the heft. And so that is kind of a little disappointing, because again, not really surprising. It's all the battery and the electrical powertrain and whatnot, but it doesn't feel, what do I say? It doesn't feel that, you know, it's missing that last 10% of that zippiness that would have made this absolutely a hoot to drive. But so keep that in mind. It is heavy. I wouldn't say it feels onerous or ponderous to drive, but the vehicle makes it a point to remind you of the sheer size and the weight every now and then. That's point number 1. Point number 2, a lot of people won't realize this, and is a little bit annoying, is the fact that you do see paddle shifters here, the plus and the minus, the gear up and gear down in a normal internal combustion engine vehicle. Here, it's actually used to control the regen rate, wherein if you downshift, you actually will have the regen be a lot more aggressive, in that the vehicle will try and recoup more of the kinetic energy to charge the battery. Now, 2 very, very annoying things. One, again, the notification or the little notch that you get on your display, the virtual cockpit, that indicates that you're in regen mode or which level of regen you're in, is basically not legible. I mean, you really have to like peer at the virtual cockpit to see, oh wow, there's a little gray dash there, and I think that's level 2 or level 3. That's very, very annoying. Point number 1. Point number 2 is the fact that it keeps resetting the regen to no regen level, right? So there is a setting in the menu which says, do you want the efficiency mode to be automatic or manual? And I found that setting it to basically doesn't engage regen at all, which is kind of weird. You would want a vehicle like this, an all-electric vehicle like this, to be fairly aggressive in trying to recoup energy, but that's the point. So you keep having to re-engage the higher regen modes using the downshift pedal after every time you have set the cruise control. Again, super annoying. I just don't get why that can't be tied to the drive select profile, because for vast majority of the use cases, again, commuting like this and whatnot, I want it to be in the most aggressive regen mode, because A, I get to recoup most of the lost energy, but B, and much more importantly, I like the fact of having the one pedal feel, wherein I really don't have to brake very heavily. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It's somewhat annoying. I hope they fix it with an upcoming software update, but something to keep in mind. Another point, and this is actually a very pleasant experience, is the fact that the way Audi has configured the lane keep assist feature on this car is actually quite different from the current gen B9, A4 and whatnot. In those cars, as I mentioned the the previous video, I do have the Audi lane keep assist feature, the option, but it's actually kind of annoying, because in order to show the car or let the car know that you're paying attention, you need to actually wiggle, not quite as much, but you need to kind of like forcefully wiggle the steering wheel every 10-15 seconds or so. Now, in and of itself, that's not bad, because again, I'm not condoning distracted driving like all the Tesla videos that you see with autopilot. But the annoying bit is that on a straight piece of road, where there really aren't that many turns, the fact that you need to do this every now and then to let the car or remind the car that you're actually paying attention is very, very irritating and kind of detracts from the whole lane keep assist feature. On this vehicle, I haven't figured out exactly what Audi has done. I'm just going to guesstimate here. I think there is some kind of a capacitive sensor interface on the steering wheel itself, the entire rim of the steering wheel. And the reason I say that is because when I actually have the lane keep assist enabled, yes, like my all-road, every, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, you see a little notification there, although this time around there isn't an audible loud chime, which is very irritating. It's just a visual notification. That visual notification goes away if I so much so as just touch the wheel, right? So I can't just tap it this way, but I just need to like hold it maybe a little bit like this, and the notification goes away. And the only way that works is it isn't really sensing any torque on the wheel. It's actually just seeing if there is a finger or a hand holding the wheel. I like this a lot because, again, as I mentioned, for one, it does remind you when you're getting distracted in that day you need to make sure you hold the wheel, but it doesn't just kind of like panic and then say, sorry, I'm letting go of the control completely with the annoying beep, and keep forcing you to torque the wheel every now and then. So that's a really cool feature. Again, kudos to Audi to kind of like continue to like iterate that with each generation of the product. Really cool feature. Apart from that, let's see. Oh yes, the charging part of it, right? So as I mentioned, we actually ended up using the level 2 charger from our Chevy Spark. We have not really had any issues with it at all. It works perfectly fine. Now that being said, as I mentioned in the other video, do remember that you can't just, if you're done charging, you can't just unplug the charger and pull the charger out. You need to press the button which kind of unlocks the charging receptacle, and then and only then can you pull out the charger. So keep that in mind. Yeah, by and large, again, as I mentioned, the experience has been extremely positive. The vehicle is actually very, very comfortable, quite spacious in the front and the back. Just an overall very, very pleasant vehicle to live with. I'm looking forward to trying to convince my wife to see if she's on board with getting this vehicle to replace the all-road next year, but we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, if you guys have any other questions about the e-tron, the experience that I've had, let me know. I'll be more than happy to share my thoughts, my feedback, and likewise I'll also see if I can have this loaner again later, because this acts as a really good long-term test drive leading up to a purchase of an actual vehicle. So that's it, guys. That's it from me. Again, as I mentioned, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ping me. I'll be more than happy to let you guys know how it is to live with the Audi e-tron. Until I see you guys in the next video, have a good day.